Hello and welcome to the Martini Shot, home of movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. My name is Brandon. Before we get into the review of Napoleon, let's seize our own destiny and rise to greatness with a French-inspired cocktail called the Bonaparte. In the immortal words of Orson Welles,
the French.
They've given us many wonderful things such as blood transfusions, the sewing machine, and even the first film camera. For a cocktail named the Bonaparte, I wanted to instill a bit of that famous French classiness into a simple 3-ingredient drink. While short in stature, it does pack a wallop and shouldn't be underestimated. Someone should have told the Austrians that. Let's get into it. Okay, so this cocktail is going to be working with some fairly delicate ingredients, so this is going to be stirred rather than shaken. And as I've said, this is 3 ingredients, so very simple to make. First, we're going to start with half an ounce of sweet vermouth, half an ounce of France's own Lillet Blanc, and then finally 1.5 ounces of gin. Throw a ton of ice in your mixing glass and stir to chill. Once you're done stirring, go ahead and strain that into a chilled coupe glass. And then finally, give it a little spritz from an orange peel. And there you go, now you have the Bonaparte. As to be expected, the gin is up front. It's very floral, very botanical, but it pairs very well alongside that Lillet Blanc. It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite martini variations, which is the Vesper, which if you're not familiar with Lillet Blanc, it kind of has this dry white wine taste to it, but that's also combated a little bit by that sweet kind of licoricey taste of the sweet vermouth. Almost kind of turns it into a gin variation of a Perfect Manhattan almost. You're not really being overwhelmed by the sweet side or the dry side. There's just like this nice middle ground that the cocktail is able to reach. And then finally, that spritz from the orange peel just brings in a very nice, very light citrus component that just pairs really well with some of the more stronger flavors working here in the glass. It's definitely worth a try if you're a fan of very spirit-forward cocktails, something that's going to be sipped on for an hour rather than chugged in about 30 minutes. Now that we have our drink, let's jump straight into the review of Napoleon. Call me dad-coded, but I love a good sweeping movie about history's most prominent figures when it's done right. The film has to capture the essence of its subject in a way that is both magnetic but also relatively true to history. It must humanize the demigods we have only ever seen in history textbooks while still managing to capture the grandeur and magnitude of their impact on the world. It's got to take a talented director alongside a lead performance that will sweep award season almost purely because the only thing voters consider a good performance is how closely you can act like another famous person. On the chopping block today is Napoleon, the tale of one of history's most powerful and dominant leaders. Directed by the legendary Ridley Scott and captained by performance from the adequately legendary Joaquin Phoenix, this is about everything you'd expect, a decade-spanning compilation of Mr. Bonaparte's rise to power, his greatest victories, and introspective into a man mostly known for his big funny hats and his height. How tall was he anyway? Luckily, Ridley's latest epic does stray away from some of this low-hanging fruit to give us an entertaining romp through France's history that shows us just what a little weirdo this uber-powerful ruler was. His tale is complete with impressive battle sequences that maintain Ridley's signature sense of scope and manage to blend both practical and digital elements rather seamlessly to always give these scenes a sense of reality. If you're worried about this sounding a bit too familiar to historical biopics past, that's because it kind of is. Ridley is operating on a level that directors with twice the budget struggle to achieve, but you aren't going to find too much uniqueness in how the narrative is structured or how the story is presented. It's still a damn fine film regardless, but it does lack a worthwhile identity that does keep this film from being as memorable as it could be. Joaquin Phoenix is one of my favorite working actors who manages to bring an off-kilter weirdness to many of his best roles, yet still always manages to nail that human element that makes these out there and often alienated characters still connect with us. But it looks like 2023 is the year of weird sex freaks with mommy issues, because not only is that what Phoenix portrayed in Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid, but in Napoleon as well. Phoenix's take on the master general turned ruler is a lot of fun, portraying a man with a consistently high opinion of himself that's used to shield his apparent insecurities. For how great of a man Napoleon is portrayed, he still has moments of self-doubt and even incompetence that makes him a great, flawed protagonist. Phoenix does a tremendous job at capturing a character with the gravitas of a god amongst men that is at the same time off-putting and occasionally pathetic. One only needs to look towards his relationship with Josephine, portrayed by Vanessa Kirby. He holds indomitable power over her, yet often finds himself at her mercy, being unable to ever truly control her despite possessing the diplomatic tools to do so. This gives the two lovers a complicated dynamic where neither one ever truly manages to get the upper hand on one another, mostly because the genuine friendship and respect for one another won't allow it. They aren't really trying to manipulate one another as much as they're trying to find ways to maintain happiness for the both of them. It's a pretty interesting dynamic that I don't think ever really becomes as introspective as it could have been, particularly for Josephine, as at times it does feel a tad too familiar to the power couple archetype without really getting all that meaty. Still, Phoenix is great as always, and funny too. He's at his best when he's being super childish and petty, throwing food, and yelling about boats. The action set pieces are often the highlight for the film, filled with impressive scale, a multitude of extras, and some appropriately shocking gore. From the pyramids to Waterloo, these battles capture the horrific majesty of war in a way that never feels too over the top or understated. These often bombastic moments capture a great sense of scope that heightens the gravity of each, yet always manages to feel authentic rather than a pre-rendered cutscene populated by rubbery, faceless figures. While scenes of this magnitude are certainly a treat, they are still rather straightforward and lack memorability, which is an issue I've had with the rest of the film as well. Everything is played pretty one-dimensional for the most part, despite its decent amount of entertainment value. At times, it can really just feel like a Wikipedia article brought to the screen, only occasionally being broken up by a scene steal from Phoenix or the aforementioned battle scenes. And while I have high praises for Phoenix's performance, the character of Napoleon isn't given a ton of material to really flesh out the character and dig deeper into their motivations and psyche. His life is often subjected to a best-of style of storytelling, with several of these key significant moments making very little impact on the character himself. The romance between him and Josephine is certainly the most intriguing part of the story for me, especially with how it ties into that superb final shot, but even that at times feels underdeveloped and yearning for a more dissective look. The film could have honestly benefited from making the narrative more focused around their relationship rather than the somewhat generic trek through Napoleon's rise and fall. This basic narrative structure could have been a bit more tolerable if there was really any sense of character or uniqueness to the presentation. For how great of a director Scott is, at times he really just moves from moment to moment in the most uninteresting way, with these big moments feeling like basic retellings rather than an artistic adaptation. The muted gray color palette often did very little for me aesthetically, feeling too similar to other European historical films. I also really never felt like these large-scale battle scenes properly illustrated Napoleon's tactical prowess in a way that really felt original or all that interesting. I've already said I adore the sense of scope in these scenes, but I never felt there was any deeper reason to them outside of the fact that they needed to happen to move the plot along. Finally, I guess I should address the historical inaccuracies presented here, from things like how the battles actually played out to Napoleon's overall impact and reputation in France. To which Ridley Scott responded with,
"Fuck you, fucking dick!"
There's definitely some things worth being critical about, but I also kind of saw it as Napoleon telling the story rather than the story being presented in an unbiased, hands-off way. This is further reinforced at the end of the film when Napoleon is writing his memoirs, shaping his story in the way he sees fit, truthful or not. I do think this could have been presented better overall in the narrative, but that's my takeaway from it, and it doesn't necessarily bother me. As for the overall lack of attempt to have anyone even try to speak in a French accent, I guess that's just the style Scott wants to go for. It's fine and whatever, but it does get distracting when you have Phoenix and other side characters talking in completely different accents when they're all supposed to be from the same country. All I'm asking for is just a little consistency. Despite this being a very straightforward and at times admittedly bland interpretation of France's most prominent ruler, I still gotta respect the level of craftsmanship on display here. It's big, it's loud, and it's streamlined in a way that will make it easy for most moviegoers to get into. Phoenix is still one of the best actors alive, with his worm of a performance being an absolute delight to watch. Even with the expert attention to technical detail, I do wish this had more of a voice than what we got. It's a film your dads and uncles are sure to get a kick out of, watching half awake from the recliners with motion smoothing set to on the television. For my rating, I am giving this film 3.5 lamb chops out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Martini Shot. If you saw Napoleon, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. And if you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me across all social media channels. Those links are down in the description below. If you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.